Akhenaten was an ancient Egyptian pharaoh reigning c. 1353 to 1336, or 1351 to 1334 BC, the 10th ruler of the 18th dynasty. Before the 5th year of his reign, he was known as Amenhotep IV. Akhenaten died after 17 years of rule and was initially buried in a tomb in the Royal Wadi east of Akhetaten. The order to construct the tomb and to bury the pharaoh there was commemorated on one of the boundary stela delineating the capital's borders. Let a tomb be made for me in the eastern mountain of Akhetaten. Let my burial be made in it, in the millions of jubilees which the Aten, my father, decreed for me. In the years following the burial, Akhenaten's sarcophagus was destroyed and left in the Akhetaten necropolis, reconstructed in the 20th century. It is in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo as of 2019. Despite leaving the sarcophagus behind, Akhenaten's mummy was removed from the royal tombs after Tutankhamun abandoned Akhetaten and returned to Thebes. It was most likely moved to tomb KV 55 in Valley of the Kings near Thebes. This tomb was later desecrated, likely during the Ramesside period. Whether Smenkhare also enjoyed a brief independent reign after Akhenaten is unclear. If Smenkhare outlived Akhenaten and became sole pharaoh, he likely ruled Egypt for less than a year. The next successor was Nefertiti or Meritaten, ruling as Neferneferuaten, reigning in Egypt for about 2 years. She was, in turn, probably succeeded by Tutankhaten, with the country being administered by the vizier and future pharaoh A. Profile view of the skull, thought to be Akhenaten, recovered from KV 55. While Akhenaten, along with Smenkhare, was most likely reburied in tomb KV 55, though identification of the mummy found in that tomb as Akhenaten remains controversial to this day. The mummy has repeatedly been examined since its discovery in 1907. Most recently, Egyptologist Zahe Hawass led a team of researchers to examine the mummy using medical and DNA analysis, with the results published in 2010. In releasing their test results, Hawass's team identified the mummy as the father of Tutankhamun, and thus most probably Akhenaten. However, the study's validity has since been called into question. For instance, the discussion of the study results does not discuss that Tutankhamun's father and the father's siblings would share some genetic markers. If Tutankhamun's father was Akhenaten, the DNA results could indicate that the mummy is a brother of Akhenaten, possibly Smenkhare. The unconventional portrayals of Akhenaten, different from the traditional athletic norm in the portrayal of pharaohs, have led Egyptologists in the 19th and 20th centuries to suppose that Akhenaten suffered some kind of genetic abnormality. Various illnesses have been put forward, with Frolicker's syndrome or Marfan syndrome being mentioned most commonly. Sources such as Cyril Aldred, following up earlier arguments of Grafton Elliott Smith and James Strachey, suggested that Akhenaten may have suffered from Frolicker's syndrome on the basis of his long jaw and his feminine appearance. However, this is unlikely, because this disorder results in sterility and Akhenaten is known to have fathered numerous children. His children are repeatedly portrayed through years of archaeological and iconographic evidence. Another source, Burridge, suggested that Akhenaten may have suffered from Marfan syndrome, which, unlike Frolicker's, does not result in mental impairment or sterility. Marfan sufferers tend towards tallness, with a long, thin face, elongated skull, overgrown ribs, a funnel or pigeon chest, a high curved or slightly cleft palate, and larger pelvis, with enlarged thighs and spindly calves, symptoms that appear in some depictions of Akhenaten. Marfan syndrome is a dominant characteristic, which means sufferers have a 50% chance of passing it on to their children. However, DNA tests on Tutankhamun in 2010 proved negative for Marfan syndrome. By the early 21st century, most Egyptologists argued that Akhenaten's portrayals are not the results of a genetic or medical condition, but rather should be interpreted as stylized portrayals influenced by Atenism. Akhenaten was made to look androgynous in artwork as a symbol of theandrogyny of the Aten.